Hello everyone and welcome to the Suck It Up Speedrun Guide. In this video I will be showcasing all of the best strategies so that way you can swing into the top times. And with that, let's go ahead and get started. As always, you can customize your button assignments for your controller. In order to do this, you will need to go to your system settings, go up to accessibility, go down to controllers, go to custom button assignments for DualSense wireless controller, and then you will need to enable custom button assignments. And then you can go down to the customized button assignments. I personally like to change the trigger buttons to the bumpers whenever I'm playing these stages. So I will swap my L2 to L1, go over to my R2, swap it to R1, and once you are done customizing your controller, just hit apply. This is what I prefer, but just kind of play around with it, figure out what you like, and use what's best for you. If you do not understand how the elephant power works, I recommend watching my Let It Slide speedrun tutorial because I explained how that works at the very beginning of that video. One other thing I changed is I changed the in-game controls to use circle to recenter the camera, and I use it for one particular part in the stage, and I will explain it whenever we get there. I will be breaking this stage up into 4 sections: the rope section, the glass and chameleon section, the rail section, and the long jump. The most difficult of these is by far the rope section. The glass and chameleon section can be tricky, but it's not too bad once you get it down. And the rail and the long jump are both pretty forgiving even if you make subtle mistakes. Let's go ahead and begin with the rope section. You will need to get a fast suction from this honey goop on the ground. You will then need to dodge these birds and land on top of the cannons. And then you will need to jump toward this rope, do a punch to knock it away from you, latch onto it, and then do a jump at a very precise timing. And then do a combination of spins, hovers, and dropping a honey goop to get on top of this corner. There is a slight alternate route, and I will explain that later. When this stage begins, if you run down the middle, you're going to get clipped by these birds coming out of the cannon on the left side, and they will always kill you. So, before the stage starts, it's very hard to tell, but if you notice, I do a slight adjustment to the right. It doesn't take much of an adjustment, and you will be just barely out of the way so these left birds do not clip you and kill Astro. When you do your hover, the laser from the hover should just barely be showing a little bit of the gray from this platform that has the goop on it. If it's completely covering that left side where you can't see any of the gray poking out of the left of the hover at all, then you're just a little too far left. As I stated earlier, there are 2 different types of suction. There's a fast suction and a slow suction. The difference between these is about 14 frames, and the only common denominator that I have found between getting the fast suction or not is that it seems to be animation locked. When you start the suction, the elephant will close its eyes initially, and if you notice right here that every single time the elephant has its eyes closed to start the suction is whenever Astro's left arm is down some. This animation happens just a couple of frames after you land on the ground, so try not to immediately go for the suction right when you hit the ground. I've had some people tell me that the suction only happens whenever you're on the edge of this ring of where the goop is, but I have seen people literally stand in the middle of the goop and still get the fast suction. Once you get the fast suction, you will need to do a well-timed jump and hover, and then you will need to drop the goop below you and get a bounce from it, and then do another hover immediately to get over these next set of birds. It is very important that you do a hover and not a mid-air spin. If you try to do a mid-air spin first, then you will not get the height you need to get over this second set of birds. Once you do get over that second set of birds, just do a mid-air spin so that way you can make it on top of these cannons and then immediately jump from on top of the cannons. If you did not get the fast suction, there is a slightly alternate method. You will lose 14 frames initially for not getting the fast suction, and then you will have to use an extra goop to get past these birds, and along with that, you will have to pick up another honey goop later in the stage. So all in all, this costs a lot of time overall if you do not get the fast suction. The best time you can get taking this route is roughly the low 39s, so once you hit that, you may have to start using the fast suction route to further lower your time. Once you have gotten over the second set of birds and land on top of these cannons, try to jump as soon as you land on them to save as much time as you possibly can. After you jump from the cannons, you will need to do a hover, and then you will need to do a mid-air spin, and you want to time it just right where you hit this rope in front of you. What I'd like to do is that whenever I do my hover, just as Astro is barely starting to fall, and that's whenever I do my mid-air spin, this creates the perfect distance for me so that way I can hit the rope at the perfect spot and get the most out of it. Now this is also dependent of when you start your hover, so I would recommend doing this yourself, and then watch the hover animation and pick a frame that works best for you. When you hit this rope, it is very important that you're at the correct height and that you timed your spin at the correct moment. If you did it too late, then most likely you will latch onto the rope and not hit it at all, and if you did it too early, you will not hit the rope at all, and you may or may not latch onto it anyways. If you did it correctly, you will get a big swing from the rope, and if you notice, just before it looks like it's going to stop, there's a slightly smaller boost at the end of it. We need to be as high as we possibly can for this next jump, so at the end of the smaller boost, make sure to jump off of the rope, and then you will need to do a midair spin quickly afterwards to maintain your height, and then you will need to do a hover, and at the peak of your hover, you will need to drop a honey goop, and then again, whenever you bounce from the goop, at the peak of your height, you will need to do another hover, and at the peak of that hover, you will need to do a midair spin to get on the corner where the spikes are, and if you did correctly, you should be able to immediately jump before the spikes kill you. Once you land on this corner, immediately jump and get a full jump and then do your midair spin, and then a hover, and then land on this glass platform where the pumpkin enemy is. If you did not time your midair spin or your hover very well, you will land on this edge of the stone corner and it will take your speed away. I know that was a lot to take in, but there is a lot happening right here in this moment. If you are not making it to this corner, there are a couple of things you can check and try to see if that fixes your issue. The first and most obvious one is that you're jumping too early off of the rope. This one is fairly common and gets a lot of people. The second one is that the rope actually did not get the best swing that you thought it did. This can be pretty hard to tell sometimes, especially when you're learning it. So try to compare with other people that have ran, and whenever the rope reaches the peak, look at this wall in the background and use it as a comparison to another person's run that did make the jump, and this should give you an idea of if the rope did not get the correct height it needed or if you jumped off too early. Another common mistake is that whenever you jumped off of the rope, that you did the midair spin immediately afterwards a little too late. Astro should not fall at all whenever you do this in order to get the correct height you need to land on this corner. And lastly, it's very possible that you started your hover a little too early after you bounced off the honey goop. This one isn't as common, but it has caught a few runners at this stage, me included. Whenever you do bounce from this honey goop, you don't have to do a hover and then a spin. You can do the midair spin and then the hover, but I have found that you sometimes don't have the height you need at the correct time to make it, and also it just gets a lot harder to make this jump. Learning this is like doing the long jump in the twin frog trouble stage, but this one is much more difficult. If you find this jump a little too difficult, there is a slight alternate route you can take that will only cost you 15 frames. When you jump from the rope, instead of going for the corner, you'll actually want to go for this lizard and then jump from it and get a super jump from the lizard. If you try to go directly to the lizard, you'll notice it'll crawl up the wall, and most likely it'll get out of your range before you can even land on it. So what we have to do is we actually have to swing out to the left here a little bit. This will stop the lizard from starting its crawling up animation, and this will give you enough time to swing back over to land on top of the lizard and then do your super jump. You want to jump as soon as you land on this lizard, because if you try to stand on it too long, most likely you will just get pushed off from it. When you do get this jump, just head on over to the glass platform where the pumpkin enemy is waiting for you. That completely covers the rope section, and I know that was a lot, but honestly that is the most difficult part of the stage. The rest of the stage is usually very simple and straightforward. We now move on to the second section of the stage, which is the glass and chameleon section. So once you land on this glass where the pumpkin enemy is, you have two options here. You can either just jump over the pumpkin, or you can do a small jump and immediately do a midair spin and destroy the pumpkin and go right through it. Jumping over the pumpkin is slightly better because you'll land on the glass one frame earlier versus destroying the pumpkin. Once you get past the pumpkin, you will need to do a full jump, and then you will need to do a hover to get on top of this rotating platform to your left. This rotating platform is on a global cycle, meaning that it starts turning as soon as you start the stage. So this is a good way to gauge on how fast or slow you're going after the rope section. Once you land on top of this rotating platform, do a well-timed midair spin and a hover, and then you want to land on top of this glass. It is very important that you do not land on any of the stone edges because this will take away your sprint, and you have to have the sprint to make this next jump. When you land on this glass, you can jump from the middle of the glass and still make this long jump. As always, make sure to get a full jump, do a well-timed midair spin, and then a hover, and you want to maintain your speed from the glass as long as possible, so let this hover ride out for a little bit, and then drop your last honey goop. The visual marker I like to look for is just as Astro's head is falling below the edge of this cliff on the bottom of the platform. That's when I drop the last honey goop, and this lets me know that I got the most that I could out of my glass sped hover. After the honey goop bounce, do another well-timed hover. And just as this second fireball from this lizard on the right is shooting toward me, I choose to do my midair spin. This will put me at the correct height so that way I can get over this fireball and land on the platform safely. When you land on this platform, immediately do a jump and a midair spin to kill this lizard and get it out of your way before it shoots a fireball at you. I stated earlier that if you got the slow suction, you had to use an extra honey goop and that you would need to pick up another one later. That is right after the platform with the pumpkin on it. Instead of going to the left rotating platform, you'll have to go to the right one due to the bad cycle. When you do land on this platform, just try to get a fast suction. Whether you do or don't, you will need to use a honeyed cube to get a little extra height to land on top of this glass platform. And then the rest of the path is the same as I explained before. This concludes the glass and chameleon section, and whether you got a slow or fast suction at the beginning, a good rope, a bad rope, you took the lizard path, it doesn't matter because these last two sections will always be finished out exactly the same every time, no matter what kind of run you have up to this point. After I kill this chameleon enemy, you'll notice I do a hover to land on top of this next step, and then I jump from it to the ice scoop and then get a fast suction off of it. What I like to do is I like to hover, and then you can see these two little stones on the ground. I run between them and do a full jump, and then when I land, shortly afterwards I do the suction to get a fast suction off of this ice. And when you do get the fast suction, if you did it correctly and are close enough to the edge, you should be able to just land directly on the rail. This is a setup that I like, and I found that I can get the fast ice suction about 50% of the time doing this. If you get the slow suction instead, just do a mid-air spin so that way you can go far enough to land on the rail. You have to be pretty quick to catch this and react to it. Only do this if you can visually catch when you get a slow suction and can recover doing a mid-air spin. If you try to anticipate it, then you could run fast suction runs doing a mid-air spin anticipating a slow suction. The difference between a fast and slow ice suction is about 17 frames or 0.283 seconds. When you land on this first rail, just ride it all the way out to the end, let Astro automatically jump off the end for you, and then just do a well-timed mid-air spin and a hover to land on the second rail. When you get near the end of the second rail, you're going to do a jump and then another jump immediately so that way you can jump off and get a good boost to the right, and we're going to take this path toward the finish line. What I like to do is as I'm grinding down this second rail, I look at where this toucan bird is, and then whenever I get to the spot where it was, that's whenever I choose to do my jump, and I can immediately do my second jump whenever I land and get a good boost off this second rail every single time. Make sure you're holding your left stick to the right whenever you do jump off the rail so that way you can head toward the finish line as quickly as possible. When you jump off the second rail, that brings us to the last section of this stage, which is the long jump, and we'll also finish out the stage with this. After you jumped off the second rail, make sure to do a well-timed mid-air spin and a hover, use the elephant ability, and create your first ice ramp. You want to get the most distance from this ice ramp as you possibly can, so what you want to do is you want to skate all the way to the end of it, and you'll notice that it'll look like Astro kind of just goes in a straight line before you jump off. Also, if you notice, I recenter my camera whenever I'm skating across this ice ramp. This moment right here is when I change the in-game controls to recenter the camera behind Astro whenever I press the circle button. When the camera is centered behind Astro, I use this long vine way in the background near the finish line, and I put Astro's head just to the right of it. This is to give me a good setup to get around the spike column at the end of this long jump. As you are doing this long jump, just continue to do well-timed jumps, mid-air spins, and hovers, and create a new ice platform just as Astro is starting to fall at the end of his hover. When you get to the end where the spike column is, make sure that you do not summon your last ice ramp too late, or else it will destroy your ice ramp and then you will fall to your death. If you are in the correct line, this spike column will go up to you but not quite reach you so that way it doesn't kill you. Whenever you jump around it, just do another mid-air spin and a well-timed hover, and then you will need to land on this glass and then do one other well-timed jump, mid-air spin, and a hover, and then finish the stage. One very important thing I want to note is that whenever you're hovering over this glass, the speed you get from the last ice ramp continues while you're hovering, so try to extend this all the way to the end of the glass if you can. You will need to jump at the very last possible moment on this glass platform to make the final jump to the ending platform. If you do it too late, you will run into the stone, which will take away your speed. And if you do it too early, then you will not be able to make it to the platform. You will instead have to land in this grassy area and then jump up to the final platform, which will lose you some precious time. One last thing I want to mention is that you may get hung on certain parts of the stage, or you may not get the fast ice suction, and you may be tempted to start over. Do not do this. Finish as many runs as you can because you want to have as much practice you possibly can for the end of the stage. There is nothing worse than failing the easiest parts of the stage just because you haven't done them enough. And as always, here's a run with me using all of these strategies. I hope this tutorial helped clarify some things, that way you can get your time as low as possible. I uploaded parts of this tutorial to my Discord and got some input from the others there, so that way I can make sure that I was explaining this correctly, and also I got some votes on the thumbnail that I should use for the next video. So if you want to be a part of that process, be sure to join my Discord, and you can always reach out to me there as well if you are having trouble with this stage and you need some extra guidance. Also, if you want to see me attempt some of these stages live, make sure to follow me on my Twitch channel, and I would also recommend joining the Speedrun.com Astro Speedrun server, where you can find most of the world top runners and get additional help from them as well. I hope you enjoyed the video and that it helps you to further lower your times, and I will see you in the next video. Good luck with your runs.